Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to be adding some enemies to our game, or at least one specific enemy. Every game, every movie, every story usually has some sort of villain or antagonist or someone that the hero needs to get by in order to complete the mission or goal, or to save the princess, or whatever the case may be based on your story plot. Now, in this case, we're going to go back to the itch.io site. So I'm going to pause out for a second. Okay, so in the itch.io site, if you search Pixel Adventure 2, so these are the same company, or the same, basically the same assets, it just has the enemies. In fact, if back on Pixel Adventure 1, it had the link to these. So same as before, you click on them, and then you can download, same as we did before. So you're going to download, and it will download it into a downloads folder. So this has 20 different villains that you can kind of work with. I'm going to be working with a couple of them. So after you download them, and I already have them downloaded here, so I'm just going to open this up. So once you download them, it's going to create a zip file, and then you need to unzip that file. So in the unzip file, it will actually unzip an enemies folder. And then from there, you have all of these folders with all these different enemies. So we're not going to be using all of them. I'm going to close out of this screen. We don't need that. And then in our assets, so if we go back to our assets, in the art, and then in Pixel Adventure 1, I created a folder called Enemy. So this is one that was there that I had, in the last videos, now you hadn't created it yet. So right click, create a folder, call it Enemies. And then in that Enemies folder is where we can move the enemies that we want, right? So we can move in those enemies that you want to use. So I've moved in the bat, which we're gonna use, and then I added a few other enemies that we may get a chance to kind of work through, or some of the different aspects of them. So the radish, the rhino, you could go through these, so you can click on them and decide, if the ones that you want to use. So you can kind of zoom in to see what the ping files or what the images look like and so on. So anyway, so I'm going to use, the one that we're going to be using today is the mushroom. So I'm going to just drag that over, same as we did for our main Pixel Adventure assets. So I'm going to use mushroom, drag that folder over. You could drag all of the enemies over if you want to, and that's fine. That's not a problem. It's just, in terms of, if we're not going to use them all, it just adds files to the game itself once we create the final game. Okay, so in the folder, so if you open up the mushroom folder, we have these idle animations and a run animation. So, and then also a hit animation to show when it gets hit. So the idle one, we're just going to leave alone right now. So the idle one actually has, again, same as we did with our character and same as we did with the cherries, you've got all of these sprites that are in one file, right? So we need to slice these so that they're in separate files. So we're going to use the run our mushroom's always going to be in run mode. So that's the one we're going to unpack. So again, if you remember how to do this, you can pause out, try to do it on your own, and then come back and see if you can do it. But otherwise, I'm going to go through right now with you again, just to refresh your mind on what to do. So the run, right, we're not unpacking this. We want to slice these ones. This is where the file is. So you go to, and then you'll see the difference up in the inspector as well, right? It just shows you the sprite, whereas this shows you the sprite mode. So single, we have multiple images. These are 16 pixels per, not 16,000, 16 pixels per unit. And again, these are pixel images, so we want to set this to point no filter, apply it, and then we go to sprite editor, and you can slice these out. So we're going to slice these again by grid size, and these are again 32 by 32. So it'll slice them all out so that you have them all. So again, you should always just double check to see that, okay, yes, that's right, that's just the right slice, so it slices them equally. So for example, let's say you thought they were, I don't know, 36 by 36, which normally there are multiples of 16 or so on. So if you slice them and go back and look, right, you're clearly it's being sliced in the middle of the characters. So anyways, 36 by 36. No, that's not right. Sorry, 32 by 32. And slice them out, and that's good. So then you apply that, and that's it. So it's done. So now we have our mushroom sprites here, or all of the images for it. Again, we want to add it as a game object into the game. So we drag, so we're gonna just drag the run 01, drag it up into the game, and we can't see the mushroom, it didn't appear. Again, think to kind of what we've done a few times now, right? It's in terms of sorting error, that's often one of the things. Sometimes if you drag it into the game here, you'll sometimes get GUI errors. So you can usually clear that, and then I usually undo it as well. So just Control Z then do. But otherwise, drag it into your hierarchy, which creates it. Then we want to set our default to the foreground. And I'm going to move it so it's not just sitting on top of our character. I'm going to move it over to here. Actually, I'm going to put it on top of the platform here. So that sets the mushroom there now. So now what do we want to do with the mushroom? Again, it's an image there. We can't interact with it. So you need to we want to add a rigid body, which is going to allow us to, or allow physics to be applied to it. So the wonders of our planet is that, or the wonders of the universe for that matter, physics applies to everything, right? There's frictional forces, gravitational forces, drag, and things like that, right? Depending on how much wind resistance there is and so on. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the mass to, let's just put it to 20. That way we can't just push the mushroom around. And then the other thing I'm going to change is, again, as we did before, I'm going to freeze it in its Z rotation. So that way it doesn't roll around. Again, you might want a character that maybe you can push and then it rolls over or something like that. Right? In this case, I do want my mushroom staying upright, so I'm going to freeze the Z rotation. And then we want to also add a collider. So I'm going to add a box collider, which is too big, so you can edit it. So I'm going to edit it so that it's slightly under the top of the mushroom and a little bit on the inside of the mushroom. And I think that looks good like that. So there's our mushroom. But now, again, so if we push play, we're going to be able to interact with the mushroom now, but it doesn't have any intelligence, right? We need to give it an AI or an artificial intelligent script for it. So I can walk, I can actually push it around, and so on. So we do want to add the script for it to be able to move. So before we do that, I'm going to rename this run to Mushroom Patrol. And we're going to be creating a Mushroom Patrol enemy, essentially. So we want to add a script to it. So we're going to add script. So add a new script. And I'm going to call this Mushroom Patrol. And we'll let that compile. All right, just so you kind of realize, I did the same thing I did in the last video, so I added new script, but you need to make sure you click new script and then add the script. And now it should compile. Why is it not adding a script? Script. Oh, maybe it can't. I guess it can't have the exact same name as our game object. So we'll just call it Mushroom Patrol with a lower M. So create and add it, and we'll let it compile. Okay, so as with our other scripts, we have, so this opens up, it's the same mono behavior, and it's the Mushroom Patrol is the name of it in terms of the public class. So as with our character, we do want to move it with, so we need to create a speed variable. So I'm going to, again, in the square brackets, so serialize field, and we're going to create a private float, and we'll also call it move speed. and I'm going to set this to for F. Again, remember your floats need to be identified with the F. The way we're going to set this character is that it will move between 2 points, right? So it's going to have a left boundary essentially. So once it reaches that point, and then it's going to move and go to the right and so on back and forth. So we need to create those points as variables. So I'm going to also create a serialize field, and it is also going to be a private float. Private float, and I'm going to call it left limit. And for purposes, that's just to put a value in, we'll set that to 0f. These you're going to be changing depending on where you want your mushroom to be patrolling between. And then I'm going to just copy this down. We're also going to create a right limit. So copy, paste it, and let's set the right limit to 5f. So currently that mushroom would be based on once we set the script, it's going to move between 0. So again, if we go up to where we can see our transform up here, right, it's going to patrol between 0, which is around there, to 5, which is over about there or so. Right, so it's going to be falling off the platform right now, but we're going to fix that and change that anyways. So, okay, sorry about that. Unity crashed on me there for a second, so I did put it back in and create the colliders for it again, but that's fine. So with our mushroom in the game now, we want to, with our script, we are going to move it the same way we had done with our main character, as well as flip the sprite back and forth so that it's facing left when it's walking left and facing right. So we also want to create a private bool, and we'll say moving left, and let's set it to true. So currently our mushroom is facing left, so we're just going to set it walking left first, so that's true. And then we are going to get our private, so we want to get the rigid body, so we're going to create a private rigid body 2D. Again, we will call it RB. And from there, we want to, again, in our start menu, we need to get that component. So our RB equals get component. And then again, with the less than or equal sign. So we want to get the rigid body 2D. And that's that. So that's going to allow us to, right? So this script is, oh, why does that keep closing? So that script is going to get the rigid body here, and then we're going to be able to apply the physics to it and get it to move based on the velocity and so on. So that gets the component, and then from there we want to really just work on getting the movements right. So with the movements, we are, again, in a fixed update. So anytime we're moving based on a rigid body, we want to be in the fixed update, not the update. So void fixed update. We're going to create that function again, or method, and in this method again you need to, within the braces, so add the braces, and in there that's where we're going to be creating the script for it. So the first things first, so we want to identify when it's moving left, right? So if moving left, and we'll close that off, and then again within the braces, so we're saying if the mushroom is moving left, so it's going to the left, what do we want to happen? Right, so there's a couple of things here. First, we want to identify if the mushroom is at its left limit, right? So if it's moving left, then, so it's moving left. Okay, but then we want to say, well, when does it reach the 0 or that left limit? So if the mushroom is moving left, and if the transform dot position dot x is greater than the left limit, right? And what that is doing is it's identifying if, so we're saying if the, so this transform dot position is the position of, and we're looking at just the x value, right? So where is the position of, sorry, up here. So in terms of that position, right? So the transform dot position, if it's greater than, so we set our left limit at 0, so that's what it's looking at. So it's tracking that value up there to see where it is relative to what we're scripting here. So if the transform dot position dot x is greater than, or I'm going to do this as greater than or equal to the left limit, and oh, I know I don't need a bracket there. All right, so if the transform dot position is greater than the left limit, then we want it to move. I'm going to get rid of that bracket too. So if it's greater than the left limit, we want the mushroom to move to the left. So what we're going to do is the RB dot velocity is going to change, right? So we want the RB dot velocity equals new vector 2. And we want the new velocity to be, because it's moving left, that's a negative speed value, or again, similar to your basic x axis, to the left is negative, to the right is positive. So we want it moving at a negative move speed, and then RB dot velocity dot y, right? So we're not changing the y velocity at all. It's not changing in the y-axis. And then similarly, we want to make sure it's facing to the left, so that it's facing to the left. So we want to set that the local scale. So transform dot local scale equals new vector 2, and we want this set to 1, 1. So unlike our main character, so our main character, all of the art or the sprites are facing to the right, right? So our positive one is actually to the right, right? Or at least it's facing right. And then when we flipped it, we wanted to say it's minus, so the local scale was -1, 1. And that's because -1 flips it so it's facing left. Whereas for the mushroom, it's the opposite. The sprites are already facing left, so we're going to leave this as +1, 1. Right? If we change this to -1, it'll flip it so your mushroom is facing to the right. So if we go back in here, so that sets our sprite. Now it's going to move to the left, and then it's going to be facing to the left. And then from there, we want to say else, right? And then your braces. So if the transform dot position is greater than the left limit, then this is going to happen. So it's going to move left, and it's going to be facing to the left. Else, which means that, and again, we're up in this one here. So if it's moving left, I got to actually do this in here. So this is where it is important to make sure you get your if-else statements in the right spot. So currently, actually, I'm going to leave this in. So else, right? So I'm going to just comment this in, I think. So just so that you can kind of see where we're at. So this is going to be an else statement. So this would be moving right now. Right, so this is moving left. So this happens. If the transform is greater than the left limit, then that happens. Else, we want to, this is where you can flip now. So once it reaches this limit, we want to say moving left is false. Right, and what that is going to do, it's going to set your moving left to false, which is then going to move down to this statement. Right, so yes, it's moving left. This is happening. However, now the mushroom reaches the left limit. Okay, well, so now this doesn't happen anymore. So else we moving left is now false. So now we go down here, where now we're going to be moving to the right. So in our moving right spot, what we want to do is move the mushroom so that it's moving to the right. And the same thing. So now the mushroom is moving to the right, but again, we need to identify when it reaches the right limit. So if the transform dot position dot x is less than or equal to the right limit, then what do we want to happen? Right, so again, put the braces in. Excuse me. And the same thing, right? So we're going to do the same with the RB dot. So the RB dot velocity equals new vector 2. And this time, because it's moving right, that's a positive x direction, so it's just a positive move speed. And rb dot velocity dot y. So again, we're not changing the y direction component for the thing. Similarly, we want the mushroom to be able to flip so that it's facing to the right. So transform dot local scale equals new vector 2. And this time, to flip it to facing right, remember it's -1, 1. And that's it for that. And then we want to also, in this case, also identify, right? So else, and then the same thing, right? So it's moving left, it reaches that limit, and then we set moving left to false. So now it flips. So now this is happening. So now it's going to be moving to the right, and then, it's so initially it'd be less than the right limit. It moves, moves, moves. Well, now it reaches the right limit. So then, okay, it reached the right limit. So now we want to set moving left. So moving left is now true, which will flip this right back the other way. So now it's moving to the left. So we'll save the script and I'll let it compile. Okay, so I have this error. The mushroom patrol already has a definition for left limit. Hopefully you saw that when I copied it down and fixed it without me, but I copied it down and forgot to change this to the right limit. And just go down and make sure. So we have our right limit here, which should kind of match up with that. It does. So we'll save this. And again, we'll let it compile. Okay, so everything's good. So when we push play, because of the way our limits are set, the mushroom should walk off the ledge or walk off the edge because it's, right, yeah, and now it's going to patrol between those 2 points where I identified in the script. So what you want to do is find where exactly are the edges. So this is at about 5. Right, so what I'm doing is I'm just moving the mushroom and looking up here in the transform. So we'll just set it to 5. And then over here at about 10. So in your script or in the inspector, and that's why we serialize it, we want to set the left limit to 5 and the right limit to 10. And this is where when if we duplicate this, actually we'll just play it and make sure this works fine. So with it playing, it walks between those 2 spots, so that's great. So if we were to copy this, and so let's duplicate it, and let's say let's move it up onto this platform. You can now do the same thing. So this has a left limit of about 13 and 35. Right, so you can so make sure you're on that one. So it has a left limit of 13 and a right limit of 35. So you can set these controls or these patrols where they're patrolling between those 2 limits. Maybe you want it to walk off the ledges or edges and just keep moving, that's fine. You can kind of set the AIs the way you want. And I'm going to go over another one as well that will help in the next video. So that's it for this part of it. So it patrols them. The other thing that we are going to add, and this is fairly easy to do, we're going to add also, so I'm going to delete this one because otherwise you'd have to then go back in and add it to that one as well. We're going to add the animation for it, right? So currently it's just sliding around. So you're going to add component, add an animator, and as we did with the other characters, right, we're going to make sure you have your mushroom selected, go to the animation tab, and then we're going to create an animation. And in the animations, we're going to, so let's create another one. So new folder, and we'll call this mushroom. And we'll open up the folder, and we'll call this running. Actually, I'm going to give it a double name so we kind of remember which is which. So this is the running mushroom animation. And then it's the same as we did for all of the other animations, right? Open up your art folder, go to the mushrooms, and then you want to drag all of these down into the animation window. And we'll stretch this out a bit. And then again, you can play down here to see what it looks like. It's running a little bit fast, so we'll stretch it out again. I think they're all equal. Yeah, so then we can play it, and that looks good like that. So, and that's it, right? So now the animations are done, and because we, oh, I am on the player one there, that's why. So because we, unlike our player where we were idle and then we ran and then we could jump and so on, this automatically just goes to the running animation, right? So if we go back to the game and play, the animation is going to be working where it is running. So in that case, right, there's nothing to do here, right? So you don't have to set the animation, the anim.setBool and so on, right? It's running and that's that. If you want to add in maybe where you jump on it, it goes to idle, and then you jump on it again, you can kill it. You can set those. But for now, we're going to leave it like this where the mushroom is just running, and that's good like that. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to look at how can we interact with it, right? So currently we can move, the mushroom will hit us, or we can hit the mushroom. However, there's no interaction there, right? We can't, other than that, where the colliders are interacting, right? Nothing's happening otherwise. So what we're going to do is look at when it hits you, you lose, or it hurts you, as well as where you can jump on top of it and hurt it as well and destroy it. So that's it for this video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.